Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome back to the modding of Isaac with Lyte. And today's episode is going to be a little bit different, because today I'm going to show you a problem to which I don't currently have a solution. It's mostly a warning. You don't necessarily need to run out and fix it right now, unless you render directly to the screen during a very long fight scene. So if the player stays in a single room for a very long time and you draw something directly to the screen, so those are all the conditions: long time, one room, directly to the screen, then you're gonna have a little bit of a problem depending on how much you render. In the bottom right corner of the screen, you see isaac-ng.exe, then a percentage, then a number of megabytes, and then a couple of things that don't really matter. Well, if you've been paying attention to that, the number has been slowly rising while I've been talking. And every now and then it scoots up pretty quick and kind of cools off a little. But what that's doing is it's measuring the amount of RAM that Isaac is using. Now keep in mind, I'm in the pause screen. Nothing is happening right now. And yet it keeps consuming more and more RAM. And if I keep stalling, it just keeps going up. Now the only thing that's being rendered to the screen right now are the sticks and stones. Just my little menu items for the image of the stick, the image of the stone, and then a couple of numbers. It's not a whole lot of rendering, but it's chewing up megs of RAM. Now again, as I've said, it's not a whole lot. It's enough to spook me a little bit. And it only matters if you just stall out for a long time. Now if I go back into the game and get out of the pause menu, you'll notice it's still not going down. It's not going down. Oh, hey, it went down. Well, there are certain things that will trigger it to free up that memory for you. And one of which I put in there myself because I don't want to run myself out of RAM. Well, this runs into significant problems when you want to show a lot of things on the screen all at once. So for example, if I open up my loadout menu and disable my safety feature by clicking out of it, look at that number rise. We're already past 180. Look at how much RAM it's just digging through, chomping away at it. Chomp, 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 chomp. Now, you'll see it every now and then, maybe take a little dip, but for the most part, it's just chewing through the RAM like it's nobody's business. Now, if we come back in and exit out of the menu, it'll pause. Ish. Because I still have the sticks and stones enabled, so it still chews up a little bit, but it slows down a lot compared to when it was in the menu. And now, my solution involves having the menu open, and then it sees, oh, you've been in this room a while? It'll teleport you back into the room, because whenever you change rooms, it resets whatever stack it's using for this rendering. Now, that's not a permanent solution. You can't do that with the sticks and stones, because they're always there. You can't do that with any extra meters you have on the screen, any extra hearts you have on the screen. You can't just make people leave rooms, like in the middle of boss rush or the hush. It's not tenable. For this menu, it's fine, because you're only going to use it at the beginning. You're not going to use it during a real run. You're just using this for testing purposes. So if all you want to know is what happens if I've got like 10 marshmallows. Hey, look, now I know what happens when I've got 10 marshmallows. It doesn't matter if you enter or leave the room, Marshmallow's just Marshmallow. There are tons of things that you can play around with, but it's always going to be just one room. So I can get away with the teleportation trick. A lot of you might not be able to get away with that. But again, if you've just got a little bit of rendering going on, test it in Boss Rush. Do the slowest Boss Rush you can manage and see how much RAM it uses up using the sprite render layer function. That is what's causing it. Using render layer, as I have demonstrated, causes this memory leak. I don't know if it's garbage collection not functioning properly. I don't know if there's a different way we're supposed to be doing the rendering. There are a lot of things I don't know. Like, I can't get the just plain old render function to work. It's possible we need to update something or render something, like do game render. I haven't had an opportunity to test all of the possible things that might solve this unnecessary problem. But for some reason, it is allocating more and more memory every time it tries to render something. And it removes it when you leave the room. If you're curious about this mod itself, feel free to take a look at the code. The only things that I'm going to show you right away are things that I have minor concerns about. So if we head over to the code, we've got quite a bit of code to make this actually work. I know I'm not causing the memory leak directly using Lua because you can only declare so many local variables and it'll eventually give up on you if you do too much. I'm not reallocating anything directly in here, and if I turn off these render layer functions for the menu and for the items, it stops leaking. So it's something in render layer itself that is causing the leak and is changed when you leave the room. For all I know, it's caching some world position thing incorrectly. But the biggest weird thing I found is the part that makes this mod possible. And that's this isaac.getItemConfig get collectibles. On Windows, no problem. You get the collectibles item, you get the number of collectibles, it tells you how many items exist. It's great. On Mac, it returns a user data object. User data is not a number, so I have to check if the number of collectibles is in fact a number, and if it's not, just pick an arbitrarily big one and loop through all of the items. That's what makes this possible, is that we can inspect the items that exist. And then using getItemConfig get collectible, we get information about it, like its ID number, whether it's active or passive, and somewhere else I use its actual image. It's just hard to keep track of where all this happens. Because there's a menu images function around here somewhere. Init menu, render. You'd think I'd know my way around my own code. We've got a lot of things that call it. Here we are. This function right here grabs the graphical effects file name. That's what lets me have the images of everyone else's items and their ID numbers to be able to add them, remove them, do everything that's necessary. This part works great on both Windows and Mac. It's just this get collectibles object is countable on Windows, but not countable on Mac. So I have to go through a rather inefficient way of going through all of the items. So between that and the memory leak, this mod is a bit sketchy at the moment. So if you out there have a different way of rendering directly to the screen, please let me know. I would love to test it out. I have not personally gotten any other way of rendering to work properly. Heck, work at all. Render layer has been the only thing that has worked for me for rendering directly to the screen without making a new entity that is just ephemeral and not touching anything, because that's problematic when you change rooms. So, if there are any geniuses watching, feel free to let me know. I would be happy to publish your name with the results when we can actually draw things without it leaking all over the place. This one's going to be a relatively short episode because it's mostly a warning and an advertisement for my loadout mod on the Steam Workshop. But it's mostly a warning. If you do draw directly to the screen, make sure you do bench testing on whether or not you can take a long time in a room without it actually leaking all over the place. And if you want more details about how this mod works, feel free to leave a comment below. I'd be happy to make a follow-up episode or let you know in the comments. Either way, I will see you in the next episode of the Modding of Isaac with Lyte.